Think the 1970s was all about male anti-heroes and machismo? Think again. Buried beneath the gritty crime dramas and disaster flicks are female-led films that smashed norms, rewrote expectations, and dared to make women the center of power, complexity, and rebellion. Today we're unearthing 13 forgotten gems where the women didn't just break the mold, they shattered it. Wanda, Tyshant Jevinset Sidamjishanti. Long before the phrase independent cinema was cool, Barbara Loden's Wanda came blazing onto the scene like a quiet revolution. Set in the post-industrial ruins of Pennsylvania, the film follows Wanda, a passive drifting woman who walks out on her family and into a life of uncertainty. What makes it utterly hypnotic is how it refuses to judge her. No sensationalism, no Hollywood redemption, just raw, unfiltered existence. Loden didn't just star in the title role. She wrote and directed the film herself, making her one of the first women in American film to do so solo. With a shoestring budget of $115,000 and shot with a documentary-style realism, Wanda feels more like cinema verite than fiction. The cinematography captures the bleak coal region landscapes with haunting authenticity, placing Wanda as a small figure against vast, indifferent backgrounds, a visual metaphor for her social position. What's particularly revolutionary about Wanda is how it subverts the typical narrative of female awakening. Unlike later films where women find empowerment through self-discovery, Wanda remains adrift, attaching herself to a petty criminal who treats her poorly. This unflinching portrayal of a woman's alienation from society, from family roles, even from herself, was unprecedented in American cinema. Critics barely knew what to make of it in 1970, but it won Best Foreign Film at the Venice Film Festival and became a touchstone for feminist filmmakers decades later. The film's rediscovery in the 2000s sparked a new wave of critical appreciation, with filmmakers like Sofia Coppola citing it as a major influence. Today it's preserved by the Library of Congress, but most audiences still haven't seen it. If you're ready for something raw, stripped down, and achingly authentic, Wanda is waiting. The Velvet Vampire, 1971. Who says exploitation can't be subversive? The Velvet Vampire, directed by Stephanie Rothman, mixes gothic horror with sun-baked psychosexual thrills in the California desert. It stars Celeste Yarnall as Diane LaFanu, a seductive, immortal vampire with feminist bite. When a modern couple visits her isolated home, it's not long before seduction, danger, and desire blur into a surreal, sensual power play. Rothman was one of the few female directors in Roger Corman's B-movie empire, and she wielded that opportunity like a scalpel. Though advertised with typical grindhouse flair, Rothman inverted genre expectations by making Diane more than a male fantasy. She's a predator, yes, but also a symbol of liberation, autonomy, and rebellion against patriarchal roles. What sets The Velvet Vampire apart from other exploitation films of the era is its visual language. Rothman uses dream sequences involving blood-red sand dunes and surreal desert landscapes to externalize female desire in ways that feel almost avant-garde. The vampire herself drives a dune buggy, a far cry from the traditional coach and horses, symbolizing her modern agency and rejection of Gothic constraints. The film also cleverly inverts the power dynamics of the traditional vampire narrative. Here, the husband becomes seduced and weakened, while his wife gradually develops a complex attraction to Diane that blurs the lines between fear, desire, and female solidarity. This sexual ambiguity was radical for early 70s horror. Behind the scenes, Rothman clashed with producers who wanted more nudity and less nuance, but her vision prevailed. She later remarked that she inserted feminism like a smuggler, delivering the required exploitation elements while subverting them from within. While the film didn't light up the box office, it became a cult classic, especially among feminist horror scholars and fans of subversive cinema. If you thought vampire films were all about men in capes, The Velvet Vampire will make you think again. A woman. Under the Influence, 1774. Brace yourself, John Cassavetes. A woman. Under the Influence is not light watching, but it's unforgettable. Gina Rowlands delivers one of the most emotionally raw performances ever captured on film, playing Mabel Longheady, a housewife on the edge of a nervous breakdown. Her descent isn't depicted as hysteria, but as a painfully human response to the suffocating roles imposed on women. Shot on a minuscule budget and initially intended as a short film, Girlfriends blossomed into a feature thanks to Vile's determination and a grant from the American Film Institute. The production was a true independent effort. Vile and her team often used their own apartments as sets, borrowed equipment, and worked with a skeleton crew. Melanie Mayron shines as Susan, bringing vulnerability and humor to a character whose insecurities feel painfully relatable. The supporting cast includes Christopher Guest and Bob Balaban, both delivering understated performances that never overshadow the female-centered story. Stanley Kubrick called it one of his favorite films. Yet, for years, it vanished from public view. Only recently has Girlfriends reemerged as a proto-feminist masterpiece, one that paved the way for women-centric storytelling without melodrama. It's funny, painful, hopeful, and very real. Hester Street, 1975. Gritty, poetic, and drenched in cultural detail, Hester Street tells the story of Gittel, a Russian Jewish immigrant navigating 1890s New York after reuniting with her assimilated husband. Carol Kane's haunting performance earned her an Oscar nod, but it's director Joan Micklin Silver who deserves equal praise. At a time when women directors were nearly invisible in Hollywood, Silver insisted on directing this tale of female resilience and cultural identity. When studios rejected the project, claiming audiences wouldn't watch a film featuring Yiddish dialogue and period setting, Silver's husband raised the funds independently, allowing her complete creative control. What emerged was a masterpiece of historical feminism. The film explores how immigration affects gender dynamics within marriage, as Gittel's traditional values clash with her husband's eager Americanization. When he demands she abandon her orthodox wig and adopt modern fashions, it becomes a battleground for cultural identity and female autonomy. Shot in black and white to evoke both period authenticity and documentary realism, Hester Street recreates the bustling tenements and sweatshops of the Lower East Side with remarkable detail despite its limited budget. The film's visual style pays homage to early photography and immigrant narratives while maintaining an intimate focus on Gittel's inner journey. Despite distributor pushback, it became a surprise success at the box office, earning over $5 million on a tiny budget. Its critical acclaim helped open doors for more women directors and ethnically specific storytelling in American cinema. Its legacy lives in every immigrant story, told with dignity and depth. If you want period drama with a beating feminist heart, this one's essential. The Driver's Seat, 1974. Elizabeth Taylor like you've never seen her. In The Driver's Seat, she plays Lisa, a deeply disturbed woman on a cryptic journey through Rome, seeking something or someone with eerie determination. Based on the novella by Muriel Spark, this psychological thriller was a sharp departure for Taylor, who produced the film herself to escape the confines of glamour roles. What makes this film so challenging and feminist is its refusal to explain or pathologize its protagonist. Lisa's behavior, bizarre, self-destructive, occasionally cruel, is presented without the usual psychological framing that makes difficult women comprehensible to audiences. She simply exists, following her own inscrutable logic toward a destination only she understands. Taylor's performance is astonishing. Stripped of her usual warmth and glamour, she creates a character of jagged edges and mysterious purpose. Her garish clothing, harsh makeup, and erratic behavior turn her into an anti-Cleopatra, rejecting the beauty standards that had defined her career. It was a bold move for an actress whose public image was so tied to conventional femininity. The film's disjointed tone and bizarre editing choices baffled critics, but that's part of its surreal charm. Director Giuseppe Petroni Griffi employs flash-forwards, color shifts, and disorienting camera angles to place viewers inside Lisa's fractured perspective. The resultant film feels like a feminist answer to the era's male-centered art films, offering a woman's disintegration as something worthy of serious artistic exploration. Though it flopped upon release, the film is now a cult artifact, cited by feminists and horror buffs alike for its portrayal of a woman unraveling in defiance, not weakness. It prefigures later feminist horror and deserves recognition alongside works like Repulsion and Persona. It's a descent worth witnessing. Ozma Julia, Based on Lillian Hellman's controversial memoir, Pentimento, Julia is a haunting tale of female friendship, courage, and political resistance. Jane Fonda stars as Hellman, a playwright entangled in the dangerous world of anti-Nazi resistance thanks to her enigmatic friend Julia, played with steely grace by Vanessa Redgrave. What distinguishes Julia in the landscape of 1970s cinema is its portrayal of female heroism outside domestic contexts. The film depicts women engaged in high-stakes political resistance, risking their lives for ideological commitments rather than romantic or familial ties. This representation of female courage was radical in a decade where women's stories typically centered on marriage and motherhood. The central friendship between Hellman and Julia offers a powerful counter-narrative to the era's buddy films. Their connection is intellectual, political, and deeply emotional, yet never reduced to the competitive or catty stereotypes that often characterize female relationships on screen. When Lillian crosses European borders with illegal funds hidden in her hat, she's not acting for love of a man, but for loyalty to another woman's cause. While Fonda anchors the story, Redgrave's performance is unforgettable, calm, commanding, tragic. The two women represent different kinds of bravery, Hellman with her words, Julia with her actions. Their contrasting personalities, Hellman's anxious determination versus Julia's serene conviction, create a complex portrait of how women navigate political resistance on their own terms. Behind the scenes, the film was directed by Fred Zinnemann, fresh off his A Man for All Seasons success, but the emotional power rests squarely on its female leads. The screenplay, though adapted by Alvin Sargent, carries Hellman's voice, sharp, defiant, and unapologetically female. Redgrave won the Oscar, and the film earned 11 nominations. But over the years, Julia faded from cultural memory, partly due to debates about its factual accuracy. Still, as a film, it stands tall, a richly layered portrait of love, loyalty, and sacrifice between two women in a world ruled by men. Looking for Mr. Goodbar, 1977. One of the darkest and most misunderstood films of the decade, Looking for Mr. Goodbar dives headfirst into the sexual revolution and shows us the cost. Diane Keaton stars as Teresa Dunn, a seemingly composed teacher by day who descends into a world of bars, one-night stands, and risky thrill-seeking by night. It's a chilling, complex look at a woman exploring freedom, yet haunted by danger. Released at a pivotal moment in second-wave feminism, the film confronts the contradictions of female sexual liberation in a still patriarchal world. Teresa's journey, from sheltered Catholic schoolgirl to sexually adventurous single woman, is neither condemned nor celebrated, but examined with unflinching honesty. Her nighttime excursions offer both pleasure and peril, freedom and new forms of confinement. What makes Goodbar particularly complex is how it refuses easy categorization. It's neither a cautionary tale nor an empowerment narrative. Teresa's sexuality is presented as both liberating and self-destructive, a paradox that many feminist critics of the era were still grappling with. Her rejection of the domestic path feels simultaneously like rebellion and self-sabotage. Keaton's performance is magnetic, layered, tragic, defiant. Fresh from her success in Annie Hall, she strips away all comedic charm to create a character of troubling depth. In bar scenes, where Teresa adopts different personas for different men, Keaton shows us both the thrill of self-invention and its underlying desperation. Director Richard Brooks employs jarring visual techniques, strobing lights, disorienting angles, abrupt cuts between day and night scenes, to contrast Teresa's orderly teaching life with her chaotic nights. The film's visual language suggests that both worlds are ultimately constraining, offering different forms of performance rather than true freedom. Behind the camera, the studio had reservations about the graphic ending, but Brooks insisted on its bleak realism. Box office numbers were strong, but the film's legacy remains tangled in debates about feminism and fatalism. One thing's certain, Mr. Goodbar is not easy to watch, but it's impossible to forget. Jean Dealman, 23 Quai du Commerce, 1080 Bruxelles, 1975. This Belgian masterwork may not be a popcorn flick, but it's a towering achievement in feminist cinema. Directed by Chantal Akerman, the film meticulously follows a widowed housewife, played by Delphine Seyrig, through 3 days of cooking, cleaning, and sex work to support her son. On paper, it sounds mundane. On screen, it's hypnotic. The film's revolutionary approach lies in its treatment of time. Through its 3-hour-plus runtime, we observe Jeanne's domestic rituals in real time, peeling potatoes, making beds, brewing coffee. This radical attention to traditionally invisible female labor forces viewers to witness what society typically ignores. By the second day, when Jeanne's routines begin to show small disruptions, a dropped spoon, an overcooked potato, these tiny variations become loaded with dramatic tension. Ackerman's formal rigor, static camera positions, symmetrical compositions, precise timing, creates a visual language as regimented as Jeanne's life. The apartment becomes a geometric prison, with doorways framing Jeanne like a woman caught in architecture. The film's sound design is equally meticulous, emphasizing domestic noises, running water, clinking dishes, closing doors, that form the soundtrack of female confinement. What's particularly groundbreaking about Jeanne Dealman is how it transforms domestic space into political territory. By showing how patriarchal systems shape even the most private aspects of women's lives, Ackerman makes the personal starkly political. Jeanne's afternoon prostitution is presented not as moral failure, but economic necessity, another form of labor to maintain her middle-class facade. Ackerman, just 25 at the time, defied every rule of commercial cinema. Long, static shots, minimal dialogue, a runtime over 3 hours. Yet, Jeanne Dealman is anything but boring. It builds tension like a pressure cooker, leading to one of the most shocking finales in art house history, a moment of violence that feels simultaneously unexpected and utterly inevitable. Critics didn't know what to do with it in 1975, but today, it's revered. In 2022, it was named the greatest film of all time in the prestigious Sight and Sound poll. That's no fluke. This is a film that turns everyday routine into rebellion. Images, 1972. Don't be fooled by the title. Robert Altman's Images is less about photographs and more about fractured identity. Susanna York delivers a mesmerizing performance as Catherine, a children's author slowly losing her grip on reality. Hallucinations, doppelgangers, and shifting timelines twist the narrative into a psychological labyrinth. Unlike many films about mad women, Images refuses to explain Catherine's psychological state through convenient trauma or reduce her to victim status. Instead, it places viewers inside her disintegrating perspective, blurring the line between reality and hallucination until we share her disorientation. This subjective approach was revolutionary for female-centered psychological horror, which had typically observed troubled women from a clinical distance. This isn't just a portrait of madness. It's a meditation on the fragmented roles women are forced to juggle: caregiver, artist, lover, mother. Catherine's hallucinations often involve alternate versions of herself or other women who've played roles in her husband's life, suggesting that her breakdown stems partly from the impossible task of reconciling competing female identities. The film's setting, an isolated country house in Ireland, becomes a character itself, with misty landscapes and winding roads that mirror Catherine's internal labyrinth. Altman uses reflective surfaces, windows, mirrors, ponds, to fragment York's image throughout the film, visually reinforcing her splintered selfhood. Altman wrote the script himself, but York's interpretation elevates it into something haunting. Her performance is all the more remarkable considering she was simultaneously writing a children's book, In Search of Unicorns, which appears in the film as Catherine's work in progress. This blurring of actress and character adds another meta layer to the film's exploration of identity. The score, by John Williams with percussionist Stomu Yamashita, adds an unnerving edge, pulsing like a heartbeat beneath Catherine's unraveling mind. The innovative sound design also contributes to the psychological atmosphere, distorting everyday noises and overlapping dialogue from different timelines. Though Images won York the Best Actress award at Cannes, it never found mainstream footing, perhaps too cerebral, too uncomfortable. But its legacy lives on in the DNA of every psychological thriller with a female lead. Think Black Swan, think Repulsion, then Rewind, because Images did it first. An Unmarried Woman, 1978. Here's to the heartbreak survivors. An Unmarried Woman charts the emotional rebirth of Erica Benton, played by the luminous Jill Clayburgh, a Manhattan wife and mother whose life shatters when her husband leaves her for a younger woman. What could have been a cliché divorce story becomes a triumphant exploration of selfhood, sexuality, and independence. The film's brilliance lies in its detailed observation of Erica's journey from devastation to self-discovery. We see her initial breakdown, vomiting in a street after her husband's confession, but also her gradual reconstruction of identity through therapy, friendship, art, and sexual exploration. This thorough examination of divorce from a woman's perspective was unprecedented in mainstream cinema, which had typically treated female abandonment as either tragedy or comeuppance. Written and directed by Paul Mazursky, the film balances heartbreak with humor, featuring frank conversations, therapy sessions, and real, unfiltered female friendships. The scenes between Erica and her tight-knit group of friends offer some of cinema's most authentic portrayals of how women actually talk to each other, supporting without sugarcoating, advising without judging. What makes An Unmarried Woman particularly feminist is how it subverts the typical romance narrative. When Erica begins a relationship with a charismatic artist, Alan Bates, the film suggests that romance is part of her journey, not its destination. The final scene, where she struggles to carry a massive canvas through Soho streets, becomes a perfect visual metaphor for her new independence. Awkward, difficult, but ultimately her own choice. Clayburgh brings Erica to life with grace and grit, earning an Academy Award nomination and global acclaim. Her performance captures both vulnerability and emerging strength, often in the same scene. The famous sequence where she dances alone in her apartment, moving from tentative steps to abandoned joy, encapsulates her character's evolution with minimal dialogue. It was one of the rare mainstream hits on this list, grossing over $24 million, but still feels underrated today. Why? Maybe because it's about emotional intelligence, not spectacle. There are no car chases or courtroom battles, just one woman rediscovering her worth, one messy step at a time. And that, in 1978, was radical. 13. The Trouble with Angels, 1973, re-release. While originally released in 1966, The Trouble with Angels got a second life in the early 70s through campus screenings and feminist film circles. Why? Because it dared to show young women rebelling, with charm and wit, inside a Catholic girls' school. Haley Mills and June Harding play mischievous students who challenge the authority of Mother Superior, portrayed by Rosalind Russell in one of her last great roles. What makes this film particularly significant is its director, Ida Lupino, a pioneering female filmmaker who began directing when Hollywood had virtually no women behind the camera. Lupino brought nuance to what could have been a simple comedy, infusing the film with subtle observations about female authority, mentorship, and rebellion within sanctioned spaces. The film's feminism operates on multiple levels. On the surface, it celebrates girls' mischief and solidarity, their scathingly brilliant ideas for disrupting school routine. Deeper down, it explores how female communities develop their own power structures and value systems outside male influence. The school becomes a microcosm where women of different generations negotiate authority and independence. Perhaps most subversively, the film suggests that religious life could be a legitimate choice for intelligent, independent young women, not as escape or denial, but as an alternative path to female agency. When one of the rebellious students ultimately chooses to become a nun, it's presented not as capitulation, but as a conscious embrace of a women-centered community. The Trouble with Angels was a hit in its day, but faded in the male-dominated film canon. Its resurgence in the 70s reframed it as a celebration of female bonds and self-discovery, paving the way for teen-centered feminist stories like Mona Lisa Smile and Booksmart. Today it plays like a light but deceptively subversive delight, a reminder that not all rebellions wear leather jackets. If any of these titles sparked your curiosity, now's the time to seek them out, stream them, or dust off that VHS player. Many have been restored and re-released in recent years, finding new audiences through streaming platforms and boutique distributors like Criterion Collection. Their rediscovery isn't just an exercise in nostalgia, it's a reclamation of women's cinematic history, and an opportunity to trace feminist filmmaking to its roots. And hey, we're just getting started. If you crave more buried brilliance, make sure to hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, and drop a comment with your favorite forgotten gem. Until next time, keep watching, keep digging, and never underestimate the women of cinema's golden age.